Mr. Pretorius. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Mr. Bloem. Thank you.
Morning, Chair.
Yes, Mr. Pretorius.
The next witness, Chair, is Dennis Victor Bloem. May he be sworn.
Yeah, thank you.
Please state your full names for the record.
Dennis Victor Bloem.
Do you have any objection with taking the prescribed oath?
Not at all.
Do you consider the oath to be binding on your conscience?
Yes.
Do you swear that the evidence you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God."
So help me God.
Well, Mr. Bloem, before we start, I just want to thank you for coming forward to assist the Commission. We really appreciate all people who come and assist us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Chair, the bundle T has now been supplemented, and Mr. Bloem's affidavit is in divided T5. Or should I say, ought to be in divided T5.
Well, it is T5. Thank you, Mr. Pretorius. I've got it.
Mr. Bloem, in paragraph 1 of your affidavit, you place before the Chair some of your background. Would you just relate that, please, to the Chair?
Chairperson, I'm an adult male. Since 2009, I'm a serving member of the Congress of the People Party. I lived in Pretoria.
If I may interrupt you, in your own words, you needn't follow the text of the affidavit. Would you just give a brief resume to the Chair, please?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. I'm married with children. In 1994, I went to Parliament. I was elected and represented the African National Congress as a member. I first served in the Senate, the then Senate, from 1994 to 1996. Then 1996, when the Constitution was changed, it was then called the National Council of Provinces. I was then shifted to the National Assembly. And since then, up until 2014, I served in the National Assembly as a member.
Did you serve, Mr. Bloem, on a portfolio committee?
I served in the Portfolio Committee of Correctional Services since 1994. From the Senate, then I went to the National Assembly. I served in that committee, but I also served in various other portfolio committees.
And were you chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Correctional Services for a period?
In 2004, I was elected as the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Correctional Services up to 2009.
You have recently, and that's in the past 2 weeks, issued a press statement saying that you were prepared to testify at this commission in relation to the Basasa contracts testified to here over the past few weeks.
Chairperson, when I was following this commission, when Mr. Anglo Griese was testifying, I said I must come to the commission because what Mr. Griese was saying, I know for a fact that is what has happened in the Correctional Services Committee. I am saying that as far as correctional services issues are concerned, what Mr. Griese have testified, that's why I'm sitting here today.
Yes. So in essence, Mr. Bloem, you're giving evidence at very short notice, and we thank you for assisting the investigators and the Commission. But as I understand your evidence, there's a lot more detail you can give, a lot more documentation you can provide, and I understand you're happy to cooperate with the Commission in this regard.
I will give my full support to the investigators, to the committee, to the Commission, because there's a lot that is still outstanding from this affidavit of mine.
Mr. Bloem, what is instructive about what you are going to tell the Chair is that you give an overview and an insight that this Commission hasn't really had before, and that is the role of Parliament and the role of parliamentary committees. In paragraph 2 of your affidavit, then, you speak of portfolio committees and the role of portfolio committees. Please tell the Chair about that.
In each and every term, when members are elected and are sworn in Parliament, portfolio committees and standing committees have been established there. And to perform oversight on the work of the different departments. Each and every department is having its own portfolio committee or standing committee to do oversight on that entity or that department.
So the role of parliamentary committees in their duty of oversight over government departments and the work of the various national government departments is part of the structure of our constitutional checks and balances, as I understand.
That's correct.
Right. Before you then get into the factual part of your statement and the facts to which you testify, can I ask you to go to page 12?
Sorry?
Page 12 of your statement.
Page 12. Yes.
Is that your signature there above your name?
That's correct, yes.
And are the facts in this statement from page 1 to 12, to the best of your knowledge, true and correct?
It's correct, yes, Chair.
Are there any corrections you wish to make?
Yes, Chair. I think it's two small corrections.
Yes.
Chair, on
Page 6.
On page 6, 8.3, the last line, where it said contract to operations, it must be Busasa.
I'm sorry, what's the paragraph again?
It starts with the DCS 8.3.
Oh, okay, and you say the last line.
The last year, Chair.
Where it says contract to operations.
Yes.
It should
yes,
say
Chair.
Bosasa operations.
That's correct, Chair.
Oh, thank you.
Chair, then on page 10,
Yes.
it is 15, where it starts with Winnie. Winnie replied. It starts there, and then the last line,
I'm sorry, what is the paragraph on page 10?
it's page 10, Chairperson.
Yeah, page 10, what paragraph?
It starts from 9, Chair, at the bottom.
Oh, okay.
Winnie replied. Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Then the spelling of Nyuku,
Uh-huh.
yeah, it must be Nyuku.
Oh, okay, okay. Kinyoko.
Kenyuku.
Okay, I must confess, when I read it, I didn't think that NYOKO was meant to be Kinyuku, because, but I think when I read this is money, I should have thought it's supposed to be Nyuku.
Yeah, Kenyuku. Chair.
Okay, so instead of NYO, it should be NYU.
Yes,
And should it not be U after K? Or is that the Zulu version?
it's NYUKU, Nyuku.
Yeah, okay, okay. Thank you.
Chairperson, that's the only two.
Okay, thank you very
Correction.
much. Yeah.
Let's return to your statement then, please, Mr. Bloem, and go to paragraph 2.2, where you deal in more detail with the role, the constitutional role of portfolio committees within Parliament.
Yeah. Chairperson, the portfolio committees must play a very important role when it comes to oversight. That's the first one. Then the budget of each and every department, the oversight and the approval and scrutiny of the portfolio committee comes into play. If the portfolio committee is not doing that, then there's no portfolio committee for that department. So the portfolio committee plays a very important role. Oversight the budget, to approve the budget.
And a portfolio committee can call upon the minister of a particular department, the director general, at any time to come and account on the work of the department. Is that right?
Chairperson, the constitution of the country is saying that Parliament is doing oversight. The executive must report to Parliament.
Yes.
So with other words, the
Yes.
portfolio committee
Yes.
is having power
Yes.
to call the minister
Yes.
at any time,
Yes.
to come and account,
And officials of a
and
department.
officials
Yes.
of the department.
Yes. Thank you.
So as I understand what you are telling the chair in summary, Mr. Bloem, is that according to our constitution, the executive arm of government, and in particular the various government departments, are accountable to Parliament and must report to Parliament.
That is correct, Chair.
And in this regard, Parliament works through its parliamentary committees.
That's correct, Chair.
And you're going to talk in your evidence about the functioning or lack of functioning of the Standing Committee in relation to correctional services.
The portfolio committee.
Not SCOPA, the
Not-
portfolio
yeah, the
committee.
portfolio
SCOPA does come into it, but we'll talk about that later.
That's correct, yeah.
Before we proceed, what powers does a portfolio committee have in terms of what it can do when it is unhappy with reports or explanations from a government department, from a minister, from a director general, from officials of a department? If it's unhappy with explanations, or if it believes that there's something wrong going on there, what are the powers that it has in terms of what it can do?
Chairperson, the powers of the portfolio committee is to approve budgets. If the portfolio committee is not happy about anything, the portfolio committee can vote against the budget of the department
Yes,
and not approve
Yes.
that budget.
yes,
That is the power.
yes.
Because the portfolio, the department depends on the portfolio committee. It's a
Yes.
very serious power
Yes.
that the portfolio committee is having.
Yes, but of course, I assume that a portfolio committee, maybe like any individual who has knowledge of something wrong going on in any government department, like criminal activities or maladministration, corruption, may report that to certain agencies or institutions provided for in our legal system.
You are 100% correct,
Yes, yes.
Chair.
Yes.
The first, you go to the minister,
Yes,
the minister. You discuss it with the minister.
yes,
And then after that, you can go to the agencies and
Yes,
report
yes.
criminal activities.
yes.
there, yeah.
But you start with the minister to give him or her the opportunity to take necessary measures. And
That's
then
correct.
if he or she doesn't take those, or if you are not happy with whatever measures he or she takes, then you can report to certain agencies.
That's correct, Chair.
Okay,
That's
thank you.
correct.
And I presume you also report to Parliament, of course.
Yes, each and every report goes to Parliament, to the Assembly. Each and every report
Yes.
must go to the Assembly
Yes.
to be approved or be rejected.
And I guess that even if you don't vote against the budget of a particular department, if you are unhappy about certain things, when the budget of that department is being debated in the National Assembly, you can raise those issues and say, we are not voting against this budget, but we are unhappy because there are the following things that are happening in the department and nothing is being done about them. Something along those lines.
100% correct, Chair. We have
Yes.
done it many
Yes.
a times.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
We were going to deal with the powers in very general terms that the Portfolio Committee has, but perhaps it's as well to complete this line of questioning now, Mr. Bloem. The powers, the procedural powers of the Portfolio Committee, does it have the power to call for reports and documents from the department over which it has oversight?
That's correct, Chair.
Can it call for information?
That's correct, Chair.
And can it call persons to come and account to it in its meetings?
That's correct, Chair.
And during your term of office as chair of this particular Portfolio Committee, did this occur?
Many a times, all the time,
Right.
Chair.
And we will give some detail in due course.
Yes, Chair.
Is the work of a portfolio committee restricted to departments of government?
No, Chair, we, as the any portfolio committee, the scope that we are doing is that we can call any person. For instance, Chair, when I was still the chairperson of the committee, I called the criminal justice cluster to the portfolio committee. We visited different provinces and called this entity when we were dealing with the overcrowding problem in South Africa, in prisons. So we called the police, we called magistrates, we called the NPA, everybody that stakeholders, we call them. So it's not only the Department of Correctional Services.
In fact, I understand that particularly in relation to the SIU investigation into Bosasa, officials of the NPA or an official of the NPA actually reported to your committee.
100% correct, Chair.
Right, let's then go to paragraph 2.3, please. Again, by way of introduction, there were two entities or departments over which your committee, the Committee on Correctional Services, had jurisdiction. What were those two? You've told us about the Department of Correctional Services. Was there another entity?
Yes, Chair. It was a Judicial Inspectorate of Prisons that were doing also oversight, the treatment and so on, the care of inmates in prisons. They also reported to the portfolio committee.
In paragraph 2.4, you list persons who were members of the Portfolio Committee on Correctional Services. I take it that's during the period 2004 to 2009 when you were the chair of that committee.
That's correct, Chair.
And when you were chair of that committee in that period, you were a member of the governing party.
That's correct, Chair.
Tell the chair, please, who else sat on that committee?
Chair, I must explain this. When portfolio committees are being constituted, it is multi-party committees consisting of all the parties represented in Parliament. Now, on this committee, it was myself as the chairperson, and then Cindy Chukunga, who is now a Deputy Minister of Transport, Cindy. Kele, it's not Becky Kele, this is another Kele. Then it's Sam Maote, then Winnie Ngwenya, then the late Reverend Bishop Tolu, then Nkosi Kolo, then Mr. James Self, he was from the DA. Then Ms. Sybil Sitten was from the IFP. Then Mr. Kipido was from the ACDP. And then Ms. Rashbali was from the Minority Front. That was the composition of the committee.
Thank you. Then the committee that you have just referred to under your chairmanship, that tenure ended in March 2009.
That's correct, Chair.
During the period 2004 to 2009, and we'll refer to it now as the committee, approximately how many committee meetings did it hold in relation to the Department of Correctional Services?
Chair, we had more than 137 committee meetings, and this 137 committee meetings was only there in Parliament, but we also have meetings outside of Parliament.
And did you conduct oversight visits, for example, in various prisons?
That's correct. We had 27 oversight visits in various prisons around the country.
And the purpose of these visits, what was that?
The purpose was to interact with the officials of the department. I am talking now here about the foot soldiers of the department, the conditions of our prisons, looking at nutrition, looking at treatment of the inmates, and so on. There's a lot of other things that we are looking, but oversight, that is why we are going to these prisons.
And you have told the chair that you interrogated for the purpose of approving or rejecting the budget of the Department of Correctional Services each year.
That's correct.
Did you also interrogate the budget of the Judicial Inspectorate of Prisons?
That's correct.
What is the Judicial Inspectorate of Prisons? Because you're going to talk a little about it later.
This body was set up by the president to also to do oversight in prisons when it comes to treatment of the inmates. Inmates can complain to this body. It's an independent body of the correctional services.
And it's headed by a judge?
It's headed by a judge.
Right. And you say it was set up by the president. Which president?
It first started with, if I'm not wrong, President Mandela. Okay. President Mandela, then President Thabo Mbeki. Yeah, but it went on. Yeah.
The minutes of committee meetings reports in relation to site visits or oversight visits, where are all these documents kept?
Chair, in each and every meeting of Parliament, there's recordings, the electronic recordings. There's also handwritten minutes by our committee secretary.
And these, no doubt, will, through the correct procedures, Chair, be available to the investigators to supplement the statement in due course.
That's correct, Chair.
How did the committee function? It's a multi-party committee. The fact that it was a multi-party committee, how did that affect the functioning of the committee?
Chairperson, I can say without any doubt, this was the best committee in Parliament during that time. We were working in the interest of the country. When it comes to political affiliation, it was not in this committee. We were working as a unit there. If people from different parties were having problems or concerns, they will come to me and we will solve that problem. But there was Mr. Self, Ms. Sitten, Rashbali, Mr. Kipido was from the opposition. But I can tell you, up until today, I'm still having that relationship with them.
By all accounts, the role and functioning of the Portfolio Committee, the multi-party Portfolio Committee, is a central instrument in our parliamentary democracy.
Correct. Yes, Chair.
Did the committee, during your period as chair, encounter difficulties in its operation? And I'm at paragraph 6 of your statement.
Chairperson, we had serious problems when it comes to the committee, the Department of Correctional Service, the leadership of the Department of Correctional Services, the top leadership, not with the ordinary members of the department.
So that, there you are talking about the leadership at national level?
That's correct, Chair.
Okay.
Yeah, let me be specific.
Yes.
The commissioner.
Yes.
And his top structure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How did these difficulties present themselves in relation to your functioning? What was the problem in fact?
Chairperson, let me be very clear.
Or maybe before that, it might be convenient if you tell us who the National Commissioner was, if it was only one during the time that you were chairperson of the committee, or if there were more, then you can just tell us from that year to that year it was so and so, from that year to that year it was so and so, and then you can tell us about the challenges.
Chairperson, I won't put the years, but I can tell you
Yes.
about the commissioners.
Yes.
Linda Mti was the commissioner at that time.
Yes.
Then Vinnie Peterson,
Yes.
the late Vinnie Peterson,
Yes.
took over
Yes.
from him.
Yes.
And then after that, it was Tom Moyane,
Yes.
who was the chair. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Then, Mr. Pretorius, you had asked a question.
And who was the minister, just to complete that round of questioning?
The minister was Ngonde Balfour, chair.
Right, you were going to tell the chair how the difficulties presented themselves as a matter of fact in relation to information, documentation, reports, requests made by the committee to the department. Tell the chair about that, please.
Chairperson,
In
we
general
had
terms.
very serious problems when it comes to accountability from the department. All the time when we come to meetings, it's either the information will come late or the information will not be there at all. So it was very difficult for us to interrogate this. And Chair, I will make minutes available of our meetings.
Yes.
What I am saying here.
Yes. Thank you. Did you form any view about whether the delay in giving the committee documents or information, or the failure to give information to the committee by the department was a matter of incompetence and inefficiency, or did you form a view that it was much more than that, or are you not able to tell? When I say much more than that, maybe that it was deliberate to sabotage the work of the committee, or is it something you are not sure about?
Chairperson, this was clearly undermining the authority of the committee.
Thank you.
You give an example of the lack of effective communication between the executive authority on the one hand and the committee on the other in paragraph 7.1, and you refer to the example of the redeployment of the former National Commissioner of Correctional Services in November 2008, Mr. Vernie Peterson. Please tell the Chair of those circumstances.
Chairperson, there was a breakdown of relationship between the committee, and when I'm saying here, DCS Executive Authority, I am referring to the Minister of Correctional Services.
Yes,
Ngonde Balfo.
yes.
There was a breakdown in the relationship between the committee and him. When Mr. Vernie Peterson, the commissioner then, the late Mr. Peterson, was redeployed to sports and recreational, we were not informed. We also learned this redeployment from the media. We were not taken into consideration about his and the reasons why he was redeployed to another department.
Yes.
Let's place that into context, Mr. Bloem. For what period did Mr. Peterson serve as National Commissioner of Correctional Services?
Mr. Peterson came into the department 2007, and 2008 he was gone.
Right, so he was there for approximately 1 year.
That's correct.
And during that year, how did he conduct himself?
Chairperson, anyone in this country can attest what I am saying. It was the best national commissioner in the department.
What did he do to allow you to make that judgment?
Mr. Peterson was a corruption buster. Mr. Peterson hated corruption with all his heart. He was a straightforward person.
Was he experienced and knowledgeable in matters related to correctional services?
That's correct. Yes, Chair.
And I take it that during his time, the committee didn't have the problems that you have told us about information not being given to it on time or not being given at all.
Not at all, Chair.
Yes.
It was all the time there.
Yes.
In that year when Mr. Peterson was there.
Yeah, thank you.
How did you and other members of the committee react to the fact of Mr. Peterson's redeployment?
In the first place, we were very surprised. The second, it was a blow to the Department of Correctional Service and the committee.
You say that Mr. Peterson took over the functions and the office of National Commissioner of Correctional Services in 2007.
That's correct.
Who was the person he succeeded?
Lindam T. He came after Lindam T, Chairperson.
What was the state, generally speaking, of the Department of Correctional Services when Mr. Peterson took over?
Chairperson, there was only havoc in the Department of Correctional Services. Nothing else. I can't describe it any better because I was doing the oversight work on the department.
Yes.
Anyway, it seems that Mr. Peterson lasted a year. Who succeeded him?
It was Mr. Tom Moyane.
Maybe you could elaborate just a little bit on the havoc.
Chairperson, in the first place, this thing of Busasa was hampering the functioning of the Department of Correctional Services. There was no control, there was no discipline in the Department of Correctional Services. To mention, Chair, I had a very good working relationship with Pop Crew.
Yes.
And they themselves were unhappy with what has happened.
Yes.
The staff, Chair, there was all the time protest marches.
Yes.
People were unhappy in the Department of Correctional Services.
Thank you.
Let's deal briefly with the facts, Mr. Bloem, that you testified to in paragraph 7.3. Since 2004, what was the quality of the audit reports received by the Department of Correctional Services?
Chairperson, it was only qualified audit reports.
And
Year in, year out?
Year in, year out.
Yes.
It was, that's why I described it as havoc.
Yes.
Year in, year out. There was no control at all.
the existence or otherwise of internal financial controls within the department. You make a comment in that regard in paragraph 7.3.
It was very weak. There was no control at all, Chairperson.
Right. And in what respect did these internal controls, or lack of internal controls in particular, reflect in relation to supply chain management processes?
Chair, it was flouted. There was nothing that was, they have not done anything according to the book. It was a free-for-all. That was happening in the department.
Was that the state of affairs from 2004 up to 2009 when you left the committee throughout, or was it the position only for some of the years and not all?
Chairperson, this thing did not only started in 2004.
Yes.
As I have said, I started in this committee in 1994 already.
Oh, okay. Or you only became chairperson of the committee in 2004?
That's correct,
But
Chair.
being a member of the committee, you started in 1994.
That's right, Chair.
So you had very good knowledge of what was going on in correctional services during those years.
That's right, Chairperson.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
So just so that we know, so this situation of qualified audits had been the position for all the years or only some of the years from 94?
Chairperson, there was, before Linda Mti, there was a commissioner, Kulekani Sitole.
Yes.
Havoc. There was, this thing, Chairperson,
Yes.
if the investigators can go back
Yeah.
and check
Yes.
what has happened,
Yes.
they will find more damning things
Yeah.
than this Busasa.
In relation to corruption?
In relation to corruption, Chair, they will find more damning
Yes.
things than this Busasa issue.
Yes.
Under the leadership of Kulekani Sutole.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
In paragraph 7.3, I'm sorry, Chair, did you want to?
Yeah, just something. I assume that the Portfolio Committee on Correctional Services must have been very unhappy about this situation in correctional services where there were qualified audits and there was havoc for so many years, and that they were doing something to try and put a stop to this havoc. Were they, and if so, why were they not succeeding?
Chairperson, the only person who have tried to bring correctional services back in line was the late Vinnie Peterson. All these others, no, Chairperson. They have not. It's only Vinnie Peterson.
But the Portfolio Committee itself, it has oversight responsibility. It had oversight responsibility. It was aware, I assume, at the time that, as you were aware, that there was only havoc, as you put it, at correctional services, and it must have been their responsibility to do whatever they could to put an end to this havoc. So were they doing anything? And if they were, obviously they were not succeeding, why were they not succeeding?
Chairperson, I'm addressing it in my affidavit, but let me answer it.
Yes, but I'm happy if you want to deal with it later, as long as you deal with it.
Yeah.
But if you want to say something now, you can.
Yes.
Yeah.
Chairperson, we as a committee raise many objections and many concerns to the then minister. When I'm talking about when I was the chairperson.
Yes, yes.
The minister was Ngonde Balfour. I raised many things in meetings, only me
Yes.
and him,
Yes.
talking about these problems,
Yes.
and it was never addressed.
When you used to have discussions with him, did he also acknowledge that there were serious problems but didn't want to do anything about them, or did he deny that there were problems?
Chairperson, his attitude was, no, let us leave the department to sort out those problems. Let us not interfere in the operations of the Department of Correctional Service. That was his attitude.
Even when the concerns include corruption?
Chairperson, even that, he will come to the committee with Linda T. We will raise it. I'm saying, Chair, we are having minutes,
Yes.
recordings
Yes.
of our meetings.
Yes.
It's not a thing that I am just raising it.
Yes.
It's there.
Yes.
We have raised it many a times.
Yes, yes.
Nothing, Chair, nothing.
Now, obviously, we have seen from the membership of that committee during the time when you were chairperson that the majority of the members were ANC people,
Yes, Chair.
members of parliament.
Yes, Chair.
This may or may not be a difficult question in terms of the constitution and so on, but let me ask this question. As a member of the ruling party,
Yes, Chair.
if you are a member of a portfolio committee and you have serious problems about how a certain department is being run in terms of corruption and things like that, and you are not finding joy with the relevant minister, would the members of the ruling party also report to the ruling party to say, we have a problem here, you know, this will give a bad name to our party, because it's going to be like, you know, the party is failing to make sure that its deployees, a minister, make sure that department is being run properly. Would such reports be made to the ruling party, and would it do anything about such things?
Chairperson, there in Parliament, there is structures called study groups.
Yes.
Study groups consist of members of the different parties.
Yes.
The ANC was having its own study group,
Yes.
and the minister is supposed to be part of the study group.
Yes.
In those study groups, we raised these things. We even invited the chief whip of the majority party,
Yes.
our chief whip,
Yes.
to such meetings, study group meetings, not portfolio committee meetings,
Yes.
where ANC members are alone
Yes.
and private.
Yes.
We raised these issues, Chairperson.
Yes.
So people were aware of what is going on.
Yes. And what came out of those discussions where it was an ANC study group where these issues were raised? Did anything come out in terms of addressing the corruption at correctional services?
Chairperson, the only thing that was said in such meetings, comrades, you must work together. Don't fight, because this is an ANC government. Don't fight, comrades. That's all. And then the chief whip will say, I will look into this matter. That's all, Chair.
Thank you.
I'm told that at one stage, or I'm instructed that at one stage, the committee, the Portfolio Committee on Correctional Services, actually rejected a budget presented by the Department of Correctional Services.
Chairperson, when we were now aware that our authority has been undermined, twice we decided as a committee to reject and not to approve the budget of the portfolio committee.
The budget for correctional services.
The budget for correctional services. I was called, Chairperson, to the chief whip's office.
Yes.
And in that day, I was reprimanded and said that this, what you are doing, this is an ANC government. You can't do this because you are putting the ANC in a bad light outside.
Yes.
Twice, Chair, I was called.
Who was the chief whip of the ANC at the time who called you and reprimanded you?
Mbulela Goniwe. Mbulela Goniwe.
Mbulelo Koniwe.
That's correct, Chair.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did you find that as a member of the ruling party serving in the Correctional Services Committee, Portfolio Committee, did you find that you were in a conflict situation, maybe a conflict of interest situation, in the sense that in your own mind, you knew what you thought should be done to stop the havoc, to stop the corruption, but at the same time, you were being told not to follow certain steps, not to follow a certain line, because it was said it would put the ANC government in a bad light. Did you find yourself in that situation or not really?
Exactly, Chairperson. Correct. Chairperson, let me say this to the comment. The now former president, Kgalema Motlanthe, was the Secretary General of the ANC. Now, deployment in the ANC has been made from Litulia House to say this one will be a chairperson and what. Many times people were going to complain to Kgalema Motlanthe. I'm having respect for that man up until today. Kgalema Motlanthe was asking them, they wanted to remove me as the chairperson.
Yes.
Kgalema Motlanthe was asking them, but are you saying that the opposition must ask these tough questions that Dennis Bloem is asking, our member? Must we now defend these things? He was saying that I am not going to agree with you because this is exactly the work of the oversight committee, the portfolio, to keep the minister and the department to account. He rejected it. Not once. He rejected it to say, no, this man is doing his work. He's representing the ANC very good.
So were those who were approaching him and wanting you to be removed, what was their basis for complaining about you? What did they find wrong with what you were doing?
Chairperson, I was being labeled as an opposition in the ANC because I was asking these questions and do my work. Up until today, Chair, I am doing my work. When I am being given a task, I will do exactly what you or anybody is giving me to do. I will do it.
Well, part of what you have said is very important, and hopefully the Commission will hear from more people from Parliament on various issues, because one of the questions that arises is whether, to the extent that there is state capture, and as I always say, I will only decide at the end of the commission whether there was. Yes. My terms of reference say I must investigate the allegations that there was state capture. To the extent that there was, the question arises whether Parliament was immune from it, or whether it was also affected in its functions by issues of state capture, and corruption. Yes. And it may well be also that with or without state capture or corruption, it may well be that there are certain understandings, different understandings from different quarters as to how members of Parliament who happen to be members of political parties, how they are supposed to do their work when it may appear that their party wants something else and they think the right thing is something else. Yeah. So it may well be that as the Commission goes on with its work, it should keep an eye on to what extent our Parliament may also have been affected. Yeah. Because since it plays an oversight role, it may well be that Parliament may also have been able to stop certain things from happening or from continuing. Yes. It may be that it may have been able to stop certain people from doing certain things, but it did not do so. And the question may be, in not doing so, was it influenced by issues of state capture and corruption or not?
Yes, Chair.
So I just wanted to say, from your evidence, those are some of the things that come to my mind.
Yes,
But
Chair.
thank you. Because, if I can add, because, as I said quite early after my appointment as chairperson of this commission, I see the task of this commission as including that if I find that indeed there was state capture and all the things that happen under state capture, one of the things that the commission has got to look at is what enabled state capture to happen.
Yes.
What are the things that facilitated state capture to happen the way it did?
Yes.
What is it in our environment, legal and maybe even constitutional, that may have, and political, that may have provided fertile ground for state capture to happen?
Yes, Chair.
What, therefore, are the things that we should put in place if we want to make sure that state capture doesn't happen again?
Yeah. Yes. Yes, Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you have any comment, or shall we move on?
Chair, just to comment, I can say to the commission and to the chair, a former secretary to Parliament will approach the commission to come and testify in that regard.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. In paragraph 7.3, you deal, Mr. Bloem, with at least 2 other instances of failures relating to the Department of Correctional Services. What role did the Standing Committee on Public Accounts play? And perhaps you should tell the Chair and the public at large what function SCOPA performs.
Chairperson, this Standing Committee on Public Accounts are scrutinizing all the departments, the budgets, the records of each and every department. Now, SCOPA also raised questions and concerns about the Department of Correctional Services. They called the Department of Correctional Services to come and account. They went to the head office of, in Pretoria, of Correctional Services. Nothing has happened, Chair.
Were resolutions taken by SCOPA in relation to the Department of Correctional Services?
Chair, there was many resolutions.
Were these implemented? Just in general terms now, we can deal with the detail in due course.
It was never implemented.
And the Auditor General, what function did the Auditor General perform in relation to departmental accounts?
The Auditor General also scrutinized the books and so on, and raised many things. Those reports, the Auditor General will come to the Portfolio Committee as well and raise these issues and make recommendations. Nothing has happened.
Did the Auditor General from time to time identify weaknesses within the Department of Correctional Services from an accounting point of view?
That's correct.
Did it make recommendations?
Yes.
Were these, again, generally, and we can provide the detail later, implemented?
There was no implementation.
Right. And then the Department of Correctional Services, certainly in its procurement function, is governed by legislation such as the Public Finance Management Act.
That's correct, yeah.
From time to time were breaches of the legislation identified by your committee?
That's correct, Chair.
Right, let's move on then to paragraph 8, but by way of introduction, there are two processes involved in procurement by a government department.
Yes.
The first is the decision to outsource functions to the private sector.
Yes.
The second is the procurement of service providers, the issuing of tenders, and the allocation of contracts to bidders who participate in the procurement process.
Yes, Chair.
Let's deal first then with the prior decision to outsource. One would, as a general principle, expect that to the extent possible, a department would perform its own functions internally.
Yes. Yes, Chair.
But we know, of course, that's not always possible, and a decision will be made to outsource.
That's correct, yes.
Please tell the Chair about the decision to outsource in relation to services provided by Department of Correctional Services. And you deal with that in paragraph 8.1.
Chairperson, we ask questions. The first was there any feasibility study done to come to this conclusion? There was not. The department was telling us and promising us, yeah, no, we'll come with the documents up until today. There was not. All the PFMA and everything was flouted. Nothing. They have never, ever advertised or put the tender out so that everybody must have a fair chance. No.
All right. You deal in that answer with two processes. Please tell the Chair, what is the function of a feasibility study? Why have a feasibility study in relation to whether or not to outsource a particular duty or function?
Chair, if you are doing a feasibility study, you are looking at your budget. Will the budget, will it be in line with the budget? Why is it necessary to have this outsourcing? Is it necessary? That's the crux.
Right. We've heard evidence about feasibility studies and the lack thereof, but are you saying generally you noted in your committee that there was a failure or a lack of undertaking feasibility studies or to undertake feasibility studies?
That feasibility study the document never came to us,
Right.
Chair.
In relation to the committee's oversight over the first issue, whether a particular service, such as catering, security, should be outsourced at a particular cost level, what was the view of the committee? You talk in paragraph 8.1, for example, of priorities. 8.1 is a long paragraph, so perhaps you can just read through it quickly and tell the Chair in your own words of what you're saying in this paragraph.
Chairperson, we as the committee have said there are other urgent priorities in the department. For instance, the poor salaries of the staff, because we have said pay these people better. The other one was dedicated juvenile facilities. Overcrowding was a serious problem. I think up until today, overcrowding is still a problem. This thing of outsourcing was not a priority. It was just manufactured by the department. But this, a problem of salaries for the low salaries of the staff, correctional service officials, the overcrowding, the dedicated juvenile centers was priorities, because we had that problem, Chair, of juveniles were sitting with adults. They were mixed in prisons. That's why there was sodomy, there was all these bad things in prisons. That's why we have said, use the money to create more juvenile centers.
As a general observation, we've heard of hundreds of millions of rand being spent on TV systems, high security fencing, catering services. In your view, generally, was this money well spent within the priorities of correctional services?
Chair, in the first place, we were opposed to the outsourcing of any service of the department. It was a waste of taxpayers' money, this outsourcing. And I will come to the catering issue, step by step, Chair, on the outsourcing.
Thank you. Chair, is this an appropriate time before we move on to the detail?
Yes, we'll take the tea adjournment and we'll resume at 11:30. We adjourn.
Okay, there you go.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, Mr. Pretorius.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Bloem, we were at paragraph 8 of your statement, and you had told the Chair, firstly, about the prior decisions to outsource, and then the later procurement contracts that are awarded pursuant to the decision to outsource. Did the committee which you chaired ever question the decisions to outsource services?
That's correct, Chair. We have opposed it
Once? More than once?
more than once, up until 2009 when I went out of the committee.
Did you oppose, or did your committee oppose outsourcing on the basis of whether it was necessary to outsource or whether it was being outsourced at excessive cost, or both? What was the position?
Chairperson, in the first place, as I have said before, we have not seen why it is necessary to outsource these functions of correctional services. That's why we have opposed it. And the procedures that was followed also contributed to our opposition.
Right. In relation to priorities, you've told the Chair that in your view, or in the view of your committee, there was not an appropriate or proper ranking of priorities, as I understand your evidence. Do you have anything to add to what you've said? You've spoken about salaries, juvenile facilities, and other matters.
That's correct, Chair.
Okay.
Yeah.
You don't have anything to add there?
No, Chair. Chair, maybe on the nutrition one I can add. The correctional services are having its own farms where they are planting and producing their own food.
Yes.
Why we have asked this type of questions. Why is it necessary to outsource? But I'll go into detail when it comes to the nutrition issue.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Chair.
You've raised issues before the Chair, Mr. Bloem, in relation to the need to outsource, the ranking of priorities, and the procedures followed pursuant to outsourcing in procurement. Yes. Were these questions raised with the Department of Correctional Services at committee meetings?
Not only with the department in meetings, but also with the minister, the executive authority. We have raised it with him as well.
Did you ask for information, documentation, reports in this regard?
We have asked for documentation and reports on that.
Did you receive full cooperation from the department?
Not at all, Chair. Nothing.
In paragraph 8.2, you identify 4 contracts which were subject to your investigations, presumably amongst others. Tell the Chair what those contracts were, please.
Chairperson, it was the catering contract, catering and training contract. That was in 2004. It was called nutrition. Then in 2005, it was the Sondolo IT contract. Then in March 2006, it was the television distribution contract. Then in 2005, it was the fencing contract for 47 prisons. We call it DCS sites, but that was the outsourcing.
Just by way of example, we've heard evidence about an extensive, expensive contract awarded to Bosasa or entered into with Bosasa for the provision of television screens in cells. Did your committee have any views in relation to priorities as to whether this was necessary or not? In relation to priorities?
Chairperson, we have asked this question. Why is it necessary to put television sets in prisons? Even when we were doing oversight, even in single cells, there were television sets in single sets. In single sets. We have asked and we have objected to this thing, to say, no, this is not a priority. Please don't do it. But they just ignore us and they went ahead.
All right, and we'll come to the catering services contract and your observations a little later on in your statement.
Yeah.
Your observations concerning the prioritization of those services.
All right, Chairperson.
And going back to the installation of TV sets in prisons and, as you say, even in single cells, that issue was also raised by the committee with the Minister of Correctional Services at the time. Was it raised as well?
Correct, Chairperson. It was raised.
And was he able to articulate to the committee what need he thought existed for the installation of TV sets even in single cells, or just the installation of TV sets in prisons at all?
Chairperson, the explanation and the briefing that they gave to us, including the minister, was for development and training of inmates. They were saying to us that they are going to roll out educational programs for the inmates on these television sets. Up until today, there's no such a thing, Chairperson. Up until today, there's no such a thing.
Thank you.
And we know from evidence to date, and perhaps you can confirm this, that hundreds of millions of rand was spent on this project.
Chairperson, on which one?
On the television distribution contract.
Yes, on
and the others, but this one in particular.
Yeah. It was 237 million. No, the television installation was 224 million rand that was spent on the television sets.
In paragraph 8.3, you refer to a response or justification given to your committee by the Department of Correctional Services. And you refer to an intervention by the National Commissioner, Mr. Peterson, the National Commissioner at the time, in relation to a problem or problems related to outsourcing. Tell the chair about that, please.
The last category, it's P3. Of the P3, 2 were taken by Sasol EMS to Val Park Netcare Hospital. As a department, we immediately dispersed our trauma.
Never agree with the outsourcing of anything in correctional services. That was Mr. Vinnie Peterson. In the committee, I am saying, Chairperson, there's minutes of those meetings where Mr. Peterson have raised objections.
Well, if that was his attitude, and he came at a time when some functions had already been outsourced, I would imagine that his attitude then was to look at ways of stopping that outsourcing. Is that correct?
Correct, Chairperson.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And now, in terms of functions that had previously been performed by correctional services staff, officials, workers, which then became outsourced, what happened to the staff that had been performing those functions? Were they taken over by the entity to which the function was outsourced? Do you know?
Chairperson, let me come to the catering one.
Oh, okay.
Because
I'm happy for you to deal with it later if
okay.
I've
No,
gone
Chair.
ahead of Mr. Pretorius.
Chair, in
Yeah.
fact, it's a pertinent question.
Yes.
And this is the issue to which Mr. Bloem has been referring, and he
Yes.
will illustrate precisely
Yes.
matters in answer to your question.
Okay, do you want him to do
So
now?
deal with
Can I
what you
do-
actually saw in correctional services.
Yes.
Yeah, you can deal with it, yeah.
Chairperson, this catering tender was just money laundering, a money laundering scheme. The Busasa have said they are going to take over the kitchens and do the cooking and prepare food. It was a blue lie. The inmates were still doing the cooking, and it was business as usual. Chairperson, I am talking out of experience. I visited these prisons. The inmates were still cooking. Sondolo had one office in the middle of the kitchen. One official, one of their people were sitting there in that office. And they were just taking the money, Sondolo.
They were not actually doing the job.
Chairperson, there was no labor. There was no labor from Busasa. It was the inmates that have cooked, that have prepared food, that have dished out for the inmates. I am saying, Chairperson, I am speaking out of experience. I visited physically the prisons in the country.
Sure.
That is
So you are telling me that effectively what would have happened is that if Busasa stroke Sondolo took over in terms of the contract that they were given, took over today, there was, in practical terms, no difference between how the food for the prisoners, how the catering had happened yesterday and how it was happening today and how it would happen the following day, other than that there was some Busasa official in the kitchen and maybe other people, but the actual cooking was not done by Busasa staff. It was done by the inmates themselves. and the dishing out and everything happened the way it had been happening before Bosasa got the contract.
That's
what you are
correct.
saying.
That's
Yes.
correct, Chairperson.
And who bought the food that would have to be cooked before? I assume it was Correctional Services before Bosasa got the contract. And after Bosasa had got the contract, do you know who bought the food that was to be cooked?
Chairperson, we asked that very same question in the committee. Up until today, we never got an answer. Who was supplying the food in the kitchens? But we know, Chairperson, that Correctional Services was having and is still having farms. There's farms for meat, there's farms for vegetables, there's farms for chickens all over the country, Chairperson. They are having farms to grow this food. So we have asked this question. Vinnie Peterson have asked this question. He have raised it to say, but we are having our own farms. Why is it that you are outsourcing now these things?
So, on the face of, in the light of the fact that Correctional Services has got farms, as you say, where it grows vegetables, I assume, and a lot of things for the food of inmates.
Yes.
In the light of that, if Bosasa was supplying any food, it may have been to supplement, but otherwise one expects that the food that was grown on the farms of Correctional Services is the food that was supplied to the kitchens all over the country.
Correct, Chairperson. It was the food from Correctional Services.
You were a member of the Correctional Services Portfolio Committee for over 10 years, from 94 to 2009. Is that right?
For 20 years, Chair.
For 20 years?
20
yes,
years.
Yes. So it's a long time.
Yes, Chair.
Is there any chance that a person who was Minister of Correctional Services during that time would not have been aware of what was happening and would not have been aware of, would not have asked the question, what are we paying Bosasa for? What do they actually do? Is that something you are able to answer? Is that something that you might not be able to answer?
Chairperson, I can answer it. We as the Portfolio Committee, I myself as the Chairperson, 2004 to 2009, I raised it personally with Minister Balfour, one-on-one. It's not a thing that, even in the committee, even in study groups, we raised it. So it's not a question that people were not aware of this thing.
And you are saying, well, you left the Portfolio Committee of Correctional Services in 2009.
Yes, Chair.
Yes. Since then, your knowledge of what's happening at Correctional Services, would it be based on simply on what you read in the media, or would you have any more better information in terms of what is happening there?
No, Chairperson. After 2009,
Yes.
then I resigned from the ANC
Yes.
and join the Congress of the People.
Yes.
Then I went back to Parliament.
Yes.
I then served again on the Portfolio Committee.
Yes.
That's why I'm saying it's 20 years.
Yes. Yes.
From 1994
Yes.
up until 2009.
Yes.
2009, I shifted
Yes.
to COPE.
Yes.
And I continue
Yes.
to serve on the committee.
Yes.
So I know
Yes.
very well
Yes.
what is going on.
Even now, you say the position is what you are telling
Chairperson,
us.
I can't say now.
Yes.
I can't say now.
Yes, yes.
But I am saying
Yes.
up until 2014,
Yes.
it
It
was
was the
case.
position. Yes. So, if that is true, then the Department of Correctional Services may have been paying Busasa millions of rands for absolutely nothing or something very little that they were doing in regard to catering.
Chairperson, the only thing that they, Busasa, was doing is to give these inmates a certificate at the end of the year and saying that is training. But the inmates were doing the work. I don't have any doubt. I don't take chances, Chair. I'm saying
You know what you are talking
I
about.
know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
I was there, Chair.
So, which would mean actually, if Busasa's contract were to be terminated now, if what you say was happening up to 2014, if it is still happening, if it is still the same, really the only difference in practical terms in prisons and correctional services would be, there would be no difference really in terms of practical terms, because the inmates would continue to cook and so on, and the only difference really would be that Busasa would stop receiving millions from correctional services.
Correct, Chair. There will not be any disruption
Yes.
in prison.
Yes.
Nothing.
Thank you.
Yes, Chair. One observation, hundreds of millions.
What did I say?
Millions.
Yeah, no, it is hundreds of millions. Thank you.
In fact, you deal with that in paragraph 8.4, Mr. Bloem, and you say that on your estimate, the Department of Correctional Services has awarded tenders to Bosasa Operations and its subsidiaries in a particular amount. What is your estimate?
Chairperson, it was close to R1 billion or maybe more than R1 billion, these tenders that the department gave to Bosasa. 1 billion at that time. And can I add something, Chair? You see, it is only seven prisons that was identified, these big prisons, for this catering a business. Not all the prisons, the 241 prisons.
Yes.
There's 241 prisons.
Yes.
It's only 7, and I've listed it here, Chair.
So it's only 7.
Chair, it was only 7. And then later on, they rolled it out to other prisons, but not all the prisons in the
Yes,
country.
yes.
Yes. But that rollout was also a question of now this amount that they have went up. No, it went up with 89 million rand. 89 plus
Yes,
this amount.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, but not all the prisons. They targeted only the big prisons for this project.
Thank you.
You mention in paragraph 8.4, in fact, 7 prisons involved in the catering tender originally awarded.
Yes, yes,
Is that the catering tender that was awarded in July 2004?
that's correct, yes.
And when the catering contract was entered into between Bosasa and the Bosasa Group and Department of Correctional Services, what was the value of the contract per year for those 7 prisons?
It was 240 million rand per year. Chair, it was a 3-year cycle. Each and every year, this amount will be paid. 240 this year, 240 and 240.
What we have just heard is very concerning in terms of taxpayers' money. If the evidence we have heard is true, it will be very concerning. I hope that the investigators can urgently establish whether, even as we speak, that is still the position with regard to the catering contract. Because if Mr. Bloem's evidence is true and is corroborated, it may be that some urgent steps need to be taken by the relevant authority, and it may or may not be that the Commission might have to consider whether it has any role to have the issue dealt with urgently, whether it's got any powers and any role. But I hope that the relevant authorities might not wait if they hear this evidence and they verify and it appears to be true that urgent steps can be taken to deal with this situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. There are indeed a number of steps that require to be taken and will be taken, including those which you have just highlighted, Chair. The one is to look in detail at the various oversight authorities, the SCOPA, Auditor General, the Department of Correctional Services accounts, the records to which Mr. Bloem is referring within the Portfolio Committee. And that work then needs to be analyzed, and that is a significant task by
Yes.
experts and placed
Yes.
before you, Chair.
Yes, yes. No, that's in order. It just is also concerning that if such matters were raised in Parliament, that such things appear to have continued for a long time. That is assuming again that this evidence is true, and maybe we will hear. Maybe there will be people who will come and say it's not true, but we will hear.
Yes, Chair.
Thank you.
Yes, Chair.
Mr. Bloem, perhaps a brief summary is apposite here. You have spoken about the need for outsourcing in the first instance. You have spoken about the award of contracts in the second instance, and you've spoken about value for money in relation to outsourced contracts. Those three issues, were they raised with Parliament once, more than once?
It was raised not once, many a times, Chairperson.
Do you feel satisfied that your concerns were appropriately addressed?
No, it was never addressed, Chairperson. It was never addressed.
You speak in paragraph 8.5 further of the catering tender, where you say it expired in July 2007 but was extended for a further 12 months. Do you see that?
Yes, yes.
And on the 26th of February 2008, did your committee meet?
When was that?
I'm at paragraph 8.5.
Yes,
You
yes.
refer to a meeting
Yeah.
having taken place on 26 February 2008.
That's correct, yes.
What happened at that meeting in relation to the extension of the contract? And perhaps I should just ask you a prior question. Was the committee satisfied with the fact that this contract was to be extended or was extended by a further 12 months?
We were not satisfied, Chair, with the extension of this thing. If the chairperson will allow me to say what the commissioner then, Vinnie Peterson, have said in that meeting, that was a meeting on the 21st of October, 2008.
Please go ahead. And then
Chairperson,
we'll come back to the meeting of 26 February 2008.
Sorry, Chair.
No,
You said that the meeting that you want to tell us about where Mr. Peterson said something was in
Yeah.
October.
Yeah.
So Mr. Pretorius is saying he was still dealing with the meeting of 26 February. Do you want to come back to that one later after talking about the
No, we
October
can,
one?
Chair, we can deal with this one
Okay.
as well.
All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah,
you tell the chair, please, of what you know in your own chosen sequence.
yes. Chair, in this meeting, the National Commissioner assure us that this tender, the extension of this tender will be advertised, and each and every company will get the opportunity to tender. It was never done.
And then you were to refer to a meeting of the 21st of October and the intervention of Mr. Peterson. Would you tell the chair about that, please?
Chair, in a portfolio committee meeting, Mr. Peterson raised concerns. He was saying poor planning and budgeting in the Department of Correctional. Millions of rands has been wasted on a catering contract and buying of TV sets. He then accused the department, the officials, some officials in the department, to say his officials he accused some of his officials of redirecting money intended for certain projects to secure lucrative food contract and TVs at the huge cost of the department. That is what Mr. Peterson have said. It's in the minutes, Chair. It's there. Mr. Peterson was totally against this outsourcing.
As far as you can remember, I know that you said that the portfolio committee was not informed in advance that Mr. Peterson was to be redeployed and moved to, I think you said, sports and recreation. But after he had been redeployed, were you ever, or did you as a committee ever ask what the reasons were, and were you ever given what the reasons were by the then Minister of Correctional Services?
Chair, we asked the minister, what is the reason? He said, no, it is Mr. Peterson skills is being needed in another department, full stop. That was his answer to us.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. The contract, and I'm referring now to the catering contract, Mr. Bloem, that you speak of in paragraph 8.5, was first extended for 12 months without any tender process. We've heard that evidence already, and you seem to confirm it.
Yeah.
Was there a further extension?
There was a further extension of 6 months.
Was that preceded by a tender process?
No, a tender process.
And you mention a name on page 7, paragraph 8.5. You mentioned two names, Ms. Moodley and Mr. Gillingham. How were they involved or not involved? What are you telling the chair there?
Yeah, Ms. Moodley was part of the executive in the head office of Correctional Services. But Ms. Moodley was not that senior person. But then, when they came to the portfolio committee to answer now these extensions, they used Ms. Moodley to answer this question, and not Mr. Gillingham. But Mr. Gillingham was the CFO. So they have just used Ms. Moodley to cover up for that thing.
Is that when you called upon the Department of Correctional Services to account for these extensions
That's correct.
before the committee?
That's correct.
You refer in paragraph 8.6 to a committee meeting held on the 19th of August 2008. What was the purpose of this meeting in relation to the catering contract? Is that the nutritional contract you referred to?
Yeah, in this meeting, Chair, we asked whether a feasibility study had been done to establish if outsourcing, that's the point that I have made before. In this meeting, we have asked, and the PF was the Public Finance Management Act followed? It was not.
Before you go on, if a feasibility study is not done, what is the duty on the department?
They can't proceed with that tender or anything that they were, because it's very important. You must know your budget. Will the budget be enough? Will it cater for this thing? So feasibility study is very important.
Does feasibility also does a feasibility study also investigate value for money? And
That's
such
correct.
issues?
That's correct.
And did the committee ask, firstly, whether a feasibility study had in fact been done in relation to the need to outsource, as well as why, if it had not been done, it had not been done?
Chair, we asked these questions. We never got any answer.
Did you also ask why 7 correctional centres were selected?
Yes, Chair, we asked.
Did you receive an answer?
They were telling us that these 7 big prisons in the country, they are having a problem when it comes to dishing out food and preparing food. That's why they must outsource it to a private company.
And did you ask any other questions for the purposes of this meeting?
We have asked what role Patrick Gillingham have played in this whole process of this tender.
Did you ask for this information at this particular meeting on the 19th of August 2008?
That's correct.
Was there any undertaking at the meeting to provide the information?
That's correct. There was an undertaking.
Was the information provided?
Up until today, no, Chair.
And the tender was at a stage awarded again,
That's correct.
despite the concerns raised and the information requested by the committee.
That's correct, Chair.
So the concerns and issues raised by the portfolio committee were simply ignored
It was simply ignored, Chairperson.
with no consequences to anybody.
Nothing, Chair. Nothing.
So to whom was the tender awarded?
It was awarded to Busasa
Again,
again.
did the department account to the committee in this regard? You'd raised concerns in a meeting, you were given certain undertakings by the department, you had requested certain information, which you say you never received. Did they account to you and say, look, we're going to award this contract again to Bosasa?
Chairperson, they never, ever came back to give us any explanation.
How did you learn then of the re-award of the contract to Bosasa operations?
We only saw it in the media that the contract was again extended.
So your oversight was being rendered ineffective as a committee.
100% correct, Chairperson. 100% correct.
Must have been quite frustrating.
Chairperson, you see my hair is gray now. It's because of those things.
Well, I'm just concerned if a situation where a structure of parliament, a very important body in our country, a structure of parliament which has very important constitutional responsibilities of oversight over the executive, raises issues and they are just ignored and nothing happens to anybody, because that's what your evidence says.
Yes, Chair.
Thank you.
You've given the example, Mr. Bloem, of the catering contract, what you've described as the nutritional contract.
Yes.
And you've used that to illustrate the relationship between the department officials on the one hand and the portfolio committee on the other.
Yes.
Was this relationship, or this type of relationship, or lack of an appropriate relationship, evident only in relation to the catering contract, or did it exhibit itself in relation to other contracts as well?
The other contracts as well, Chairperson.
Did you call Messrs. T and Gillingham to account before your committee?
That's correct, Chair.
Did you ask them to make presentations?
That's correct, Chair.
After the presentations had been made and after you had an opportunity to consider the representations, Did the committee raise objections?
Yes, Chair, we raised concerns and objections to this contract.
Did you receive a satisfactory response?
Not at all, Chair.
Did your intervention or attempt to intervene have successful results in relation to the award and further contracts and further contract extensions to Bosasa? Or were they ignored?
They were ignored, completely ignored, Chairperson.
Right.
As a portfolio committee, or would a portfolio committee or its chairperson at some stage be expected to maybe report to the Speaker of Parliament if a government department or the executive authority in regard to a certain department, a minister, is not able to assist them with issues that they have raised with his department, and if that's part of what a portfolio committee does, did your committee raise this with whoever the speaker was at the time, and if so, what happened?
Chairperson, the speaker, it was Maxi Sulu. It was Mr. Maxi Sulu.
Yes.
He was well aware of this because, Chair, the chairperson of the ANC caucus, it's
Yes.
where all the members of the ANC, every Thursday,
Yes.
we are meeting.
Yes.
We even raise these problems to the chairperson of the caucus.
Yes.
It was Ms. Fakey Mentor
Yes.
at that time.
Yes.
We raised it with her
Yes.
to say this is, and we raised it in it was on the agenda at
Yes.
once,
Yes.
to say, here is this problem.
Yes.
So all the members of the ANC in
Yes.
Parliament
Yes.
was aware of this problem.
Yes. But nothing came out of
Nothing
it.
has happened.
Nobody did anything about it.
No, Chair. Nobody. Nobody.
Thank you.
You've told the chair in general terms for the moment of your frustrations in relation to the conduct of the Department of Correctional Services and the inability of the committee to really do anything about it.
Yes, Chair.
Did you escalate the issues to other committees within Parliament or another committee within Parliament?
Yes, Chair. Before I respond, I just want to make one correction. Ms. Fakey Mentor,
Yes.
when she was the chairperson, she called in the minister. She had discussions with Minister Balfour on
Yes.
this issue.
Yes.
So, with other words,
Yes.
she have also attempted
Yes.
to address this. I just want to make
Yes.
that. It's
Okay.
not that everybody was
Yeah.
not doing anything.
Yes, okay.
At least she
Yes.
was doing that,
Yes.
Ms. Mentor.
Yes.
Yes.
But you don't know, you were not privy to the discussions. What you do know is that nothing changed afterwards.
Nothing changed. Nothing
Yeah.
have changed, Chair.
Okay.
You were going to tell the chair of your attempt to escalate your concerns on the committee to another committee within the parliamentary structure.
Yeah.
And you
Chap-
deal with that in paragraph 9.
Yeah. Chairperson Scopa also raised concerns about this outsourcing of correctional services. They called us in a meeting, But before that, myself personally, I was with the chairperson of the committee and the study group of SCOPA. First, with the chairperson of SCOPA. I think at that time, it was either Vincent Smith or it was Gavin Woods, the chairperson. It was not Godi.
Yes.
Yeah, it was,
Okay.
Godi came later.
Okay.
It's either Vincent Smith or Gavin Woods,
Yes.
who was an IFP
Yes.
person. So they also raised concerns and they called us and we had a joint meeting with them.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
These were formal meetings, I presume, in relation to which minutes would have been kept.
It was formal meetings. It was formal meetings.
Did you speak to Minister Balfour? You already said he did. You
Yes.
did, rather.
Yes, correct. Not once, many a times.
What was your view about the status of Mr. MT and how he managed to maintain his position for as long as he did?
Chairperson, to me, it was quite clear that Mr. MT, Linda MT, had the support and the protection of Minister Balfour. That is what I have seen and what I have observed towards this day. He was very protective of Linda MT.
Mr. Bloem, you've given
Well, I don't know whether you intended to ask him to say something about the basis for his statement, or you were not intending to. Maybe I'll ask. Are you able to give me some factual basis for your statement that Mr. MT enjoyed the protection and support of Minister Ngonde Balfour?
Chairperson, many a times when both of them appear before the portfolio committee and we ask difficult questions to the department, Mr. MT or Gillingham, the minister will interject and say he will answer such questions. When I meet with him personal, one by one, he will tell me that no, Comrade Bloem, you know this comrade is an experienced comrade. We must not harass this comrade. Let us treat him well. That is my conclusion. That is my observation. That's why I'm saying that, Chairperson.
Thank you.
Mr. Bloem, you've given evidence at a general level of the history of the Portfolio Committee, its relationship with the Department of Correctional Services and the Minister in relation to particular contracts. You've raised your concerns. Of course, you've already told the Chair that much of this information will be minuted and documented.
That's right.
You're prepared to cooperate, no doubt, in assisting the investigators with their investigations into detail in this regard.
I am 24 hours available, Chair.
Right.
I will cooperate.
Right.
Thank you.
Let's move then to the statement at paragraph 11. In 2004 and in 2009, I understand you were chair of this portfolio committee.
Yes.
Did you have an office in Parliament because you occupied this position?
That's correct, Chair.
What was kept in this office?
Chair, all the documentation, all the briefing documentation, and my personal belongings was kept in that office in Parliament.
Did you keep computers, digital information in that office?
That's correct, Chair.
What happened in 2004 and again in 2009?
Chairperson, my office, there was a break-in my office. And the only thing that was missing was some of the documentation. That's the first break-in. Then the second one, the same thing happened. Documentation was missing. And I reported it to the Secretary to Parliament, even to the police. But up until now, no action was taken.
But this office, was it located within the Parliament building?
It was in the Parliament building, in the Parliament.
Is there high security there?
Very high security with cameras in the passages, high security.
Have you any explanation for why on not one occasion, but on 2 occasions, this could occur?
I can't answer that question because I reported it, there was no follow-up, no feedback. I asked the question, what happened to my office? No answer, Chair.
So would it have been the Secretary of Parliament and the police, because you reported to both, who should have investigated or initiated an investigation, and ultimately there should have been a report that you would have been told about, which explained what was found during the investigation?
Correct, Chair.
But that never happened.
Never feedback. Nothing happened, Chair.
Well, perhaps you might mention to the chair, without speculating or speculating too much, because the question I'm going to ask you involves speculation.
Yeah.
2004 and 2009, at that time, was your view in relation to outsourcing of Department of Correctional Services contracts and your view in relation to their award to Basasa a matter of public knowledge?
Everybody knows in this country that I was very vocal on these issues, Chairperson. Everybody knows.
Do you know whether the video footage was ever examined? The security cameras within Parliament?
I don't know, Chair. That's why I'm saying there was no feedback on the break-ins. Nothing.
Perhaps our investigators could look at that, Chair. You personally, you've told the Chair that it was a matter of public knowledge, your views in relation to the issues about which you've testified. Did you ever yourself receive threats? And you deal with an issue in paragraph 13. Tell the Chair about that, please.
Paragraph 13.
13, 1-3.
Yeah. Chairperson, the last break-in, before I left Parliament as a member of the ANC and as the chairperson, my office was again been ransacked. Many documents, and only documents, were taken. This letter or this document that Anglo Griese was talking here of me being protecting and promoting white capital was part and parcel of the documents that went missing. In that document, they were swearing at me and my family and whatever in that document. I was keeping that document in my office, but during that break-in, they
Yeah.
took it. My
Yes.
personal belongings,
Yes.
very valuable things were taken, Chairperson.
So in short, during your term as chair of the Portfolio Committee on Correctional Services, you received what you describe as an anonymous letter in which you were attacked.
That's correct.
Right.
Chair.
And that document you no longer have because it's amongst documents stolen from your office.
That's correct, Chair.
Was the attack in the document and were the insults in the document related to your views or position with regard to contracts and tenders at correctional services, or was it about something else?
No, it was about Busasa, the contracts, Chair. It was in that document.
Okay, thank you.
What, in particular, in that letter, you were accused of what?
I was promoting white capital.
Right.
They were saying I was promoting and I'm protecting white capital. Why I'm fighting Busasa? Because Busasa is giving a lot of people work.
Oh, I see. The irony won't be lost on the chair about you attacking Bosasa and white monopoly capital at the same time, but perhaps we can deal with that in submissions. One morning, you say in paragraph 14, you received a visit in your office. More or less, when was this?
Chairperson, I was sitting in my office doing work, and one of my committee members, Ms. Winnie Grania, came to my office, and she's saying that she wants to discuss something with me. I asked, what is it all about? She said no, she was sent by people. I asked her, who is these people? She said, it's the owners of Busasa. They want to meet with me. And I said to her, I'm not interested. I am doing my work here in this committee. And must I continue?
Yes, please, go on.
Yeah. And she said to me, Chairperson, you are playing with your luck. You must see these people. I said, no, I am not going to see this. I'm not interested in meeting these people. Then she said to me, Chairperson, Kenyoko. I said, Comrade Winnie, I'm not interested. She's saying, this is money, Chair. I said, I'm not going to meet with them. And that was the end. Then she went out of the office. I never met with those people. But Comrade Winnie Ngwenya, they were sending Winnie to me so that we must have a meeting with them. I refused.
Do you know the meaning of the words Kenyuku?
It
I don't know if I
is,
pronounced it correctly.
yeah, it's township slang. When you are referring to money, you say Kenyoko. Kenyoko, it's money.
Well, I know it too.
Yeah, that's the chairperson. The chairperson also know it as Kenyoko.
What was your understanding of what she was conveying to you when she said, Chairperson Kinyuku, it's money, or
Yeah.
this is money.
Chairperson, my understanding was this Mbusasa was already all over the media and you know, there was this allegations of cars bought to Lindam T, to Gillingham. It was in the papers. It was all over. And I said to myself, I am not going to be part of that, because it's public knowledge, Chairperson. There was this cars, there was this Volkswagen Churong that Mr. Mti was involved in, and I'm saying it's allegations at that time, and I didn't want to get involved in these people. Why must I meet them? My work as a member of parliament was to do oversight.
That might have been reasons why you were not prepared to meet with Bosasa. But my question was, what was your understanding of what she was conveying to you when she said, Chairperson Kinyuku? I think before that you said, she said to you, you are playing with your luck.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to just explain to us what your understanding was of what she was conveying to you with these phrases?
Chairperson, my only understanding at that time was that these people wants to come near me, because I was very vocal on these tenders and what. Now they have sent one of my committee members to soften me, to get to them. And I was not there in their conversation, Chair, but what I think they have said to her, no, money is not a problem, we can give him. I'm saying I was not in their conversation, but she said to me, Kenyoko.
And when she said that, she didn't show you any money in her hand.
No, Chair, no.
So this money that she was talking about, your understanding was not money that she was going to give
No,
to
she
you
didn't
herself?
have,
Yeah.
no, Chair. She
Yeah.
didn't have money in her hands.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. If you look at paragraph 15 at the top of page 10 of your statement, Mr. Bloem,
At page
10,
10, yeah,
the very first line,
yeah,
you say there precisely what, at least in the statement, was said to you by Ms. Grania.
yes.
Can you confirm the full sentence you refer to here and the words you say were used by Ms. Grania in relation to money, whether in slang language or not?
Yeah. Ms. Ngwenya said, Winnie then responded and said, Chairperson, this is money. Kenyoko, Chairperson. Don't leave it. She then left and we did not discuss it again.
Is
Yes,
that,
sir.
as you recall,
That's
the
correct. Yeah,
conversation?
that's correct, yeah.
What conclusion did you reach after her approach and after you heard the testimony of Mr. Griese before this commission?
Chairperson, I was all the time worried and concerned about the attitude of Winnie in the meetings. She can be very cool and calm, with any other discussion. But when it comes to Busasa or Sondol, then she will become very protective, very negative towards the discussion and protect them. Now, Chairperson, I know the members of the committee, and I was having a very good working relationship with them, all of them. But after, I was not suspecting anything, Chair, but after Griese was now testifying about how people were bought, now I'm getting a clearer picture to say, no, but why this has happened? It's because of this. That is my only conclusion, Chair, that I'm having now. To say, why was this person so protective and negative when it comes to this company?
My mind is still, I hear what you are saying, and it's important, but part of my mind is still with that, with what she said to you. You are playing with your luck, Chairperson. Kinyuku,
Yeah,
don't leave it.
yeah.
I'm going to put to you what may well be one of the possible interpretations of what she was saying to you, and give you a chance to say whether you think that is one of the possible interpretations or not. Can it be said that what she meant was that here was an opportunity for you to make money? Use it, or don't disregard it, or something like that?
Here is a chance to make money, Chairperson. That is my observation and my conclusion.
Okay.
During the period of your chairmanship of the Portfolio Committee, you say it was public knowledge what your attitude was at the time,
Yeah,
particularly in relation to Bosasa.
yeah.
At that time, did you ever receive phone calls out of the ordinary?
Yes, yes.
Tell the chair about that, please.
Chair, during this time, when I was so vocal about these tenders, I received many calls, but from private phones, threatening me with my life. I have tried to keep it away from my wife, my family, so that I must not affect them, so that I must keep it away from them, and I must stomach it myself. But one day, Chair, unfortunately, it was on a Friday. I was with my wife, Friday afternoon, and I received a call. This person was saying, we
Do you want to refresh your memory?
no, this person was telling me, we are following you and we are going to finish you. I said to this caller, please come. I'm waiting for you. And this person dropped the phone. When he dropped the phone, my wife was asking me, why did you shout it over the phone? I had to tell her that what happened now, that this, and so it was between me and my wife. I asked her not to tell anybody because, let me just drink a little bit of water. You see, Chairperson, because
Yes.
I was never, ever scared of anything. Never. Even now, that's why I'm sitting here.
Yes. Yes.
Nobody will intimidate me.
Yes.
But I don't want anybody to touch my family.
Yes.
So my wife kept it a secret as well,
Yes.
up until now,
Yes.
because I discussed it with her.
Yes.
That is what is there. You see, Chairperson, why I kept it. During our struggle, it's not the first time that I'm getting this type of things.
Yes.
The security police was doing that to me all the time. So telling me that they are going to kill me, they are outside the house and they are following me and what. So I know that if I'm going to go in a corner, they will get me.
Yes.
But I was all the time prepared. That's why I said to this person, and all the time, Chairperson,
Yes.
I said to these people when they called me, no, come,
Yes.
come, I'm also ready for you. Please
Yes.
come.
Yes.
That's how this intimidation
Yes.
was carrying out on me, Chair.
Yes. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Pretorius.
You deal in paragraph 18, Mr. Bloem, with certain other communications within Parliament. Please tell the Chair about that. Take your time to look at it.
Chairperson, when I was so vocal in this thing, I can tell you, Chairperson, after each and every meeting of the Portfolio Committee,
Yes.
when we were dealing with this Busasa or
Yes.
these tenders,
Yes.
the chief whip of the ANC will call me
Yes.
and warn me and reprimand me
Yes.
that what I am doing is wrong. Because this is deployees of the ANC.
Yes.
And I'm all the time fighting against them. All the time, Chairperson, I was in the chief. If it is not, because we had meetings on Tuesdays.
Yes.
If it is not Tuesday afternoon, Wednesday morning, I know that I must appear there
Yes.
in the chief whip's office
Yes.
to go and answer why I'm so vocal, why I oppose this thing so much and so. That is what has happened, Chair.
Yes. Yes. And I assume that you tell the chief whip, but this is wrong. And it's our job and my job as chairperson of the committee to raise these issues.
Chairperson, I have never, ever backed down on what I have believed in.
Yes.
Never, ever.
Yes. And what would he all the time tell you? It was simply that these are ANC employees or that you are putting the ANC in a bad light, or what would he be saying each time he called you and you told him the same thing, this thing is wrong?
No, he will say to me, you must know that you are a deployee of the ANC. You are not your own boss.
Yes.
You are going to follow party line.
Yes.
You can't do whatever you do. We are
Yes.
going to remove you from that
Yes.
position.
You were a member of the ANC, the ruling party, then as now, but you are no longer a member of the ANC now. Was it your understanding that the policy and the values of the ruling party required you to not to raise issues when you saw things that were wrong that were being done?
Chairperson, it was never ever the policy of the ANC. It was never. The ANC was the most respected party, liberation movement in the continent and in the world. Those things that has happened was personal greed. They were greedy to stop me, and corruption. It was not the ANC. It was not the ANC policy, Chairperson.
So you are quite clear in your mind that certainly at that time, while you were a member of the ANC, it was not the ANC policy, and it was not part of the values of the ANC that if a deployee of the ANC government was doing something wrong, you should keep quiet while you are a member of the oversight committee for that department.
It was never the ANC policy, Chairperson, and the values of the ANC. Chairperson, I worked when the late President Mandela came out of prison, I served under him for 5 years. President Thabo Mbeki, I served under President Thabo Mbeki. Those people were having the values of the ANC at that time. It was never about yourself. It was about the people of the country.
I take it, and you must tell me if I'm wrong, I take it that your position, therefore, is that when the then chief whip told you not to raise these issues in regard to Bosasa and correctional services, he was the one that was going against the policies and the values of the ANC. I take it that that would be your position, not that you were going against the values and policy of the ANC.
Not only him, Chairperson, but all these other members of the ANC who was against what we were doing in the portfolio committee were not following the values and the principles of the ANC. They were not doing that.
Yes. Within the Portfolio Committee of Correctional Services, I know you said earlier on that in that committee, while you were chairperson, you worked as a unit, irrespective of political party affiliation, membership. The raising of these issues, was it also done as a unit, in the sense that it wasn't just individuals raising them?
Chair, let me understand the question properly. Are you saying the entire study group? Or?
No, I'm talking about the portfolio committee now.
Yes.
Yeah, in the portfolio committee, the issues that you were raising about Bosasa,
yes,
it was just not you alone. It was not you and a few members of the committee. It was either most of the members of the committee or the whole committee who were raising these issues. What was the position?
Chairperson, it was the committee.
Okay, yes.
The entire committee.
Yes,
Yeah,
okay.
because we were in the majority.
Yes.
I will single out one or two people.
Yes,
But the
okay.
majority,
Yes.
opposition
Yes.
and the ANC.
Yes.
I can tell you, Chairperson,
Yes.
in the committee, there were very credible
Yes,
ANC members
yes,
who,
yes.
who never, ever flouted the principles and values of the ANC.
Thank you.
In paragraph 18 on page 11, you wanted to tell the commission about your response to the passing away of Vernie Peterson, the former DCS commissioner. Now, I understand that you want to tell the chair of your concerns here, and I'm not going to stand in your way, just to emphasize that you have a belief, but it's not based on any concrete fact, as I understand it,
Yeah.
other than the views and attitudes he expressed.
Yeah.
If I may then ask
Yes, that's fine.
the witness to deal with his concerns in that paragraph, Chair.
Okay, that's fine.
Chairperson, I'm having a personal plea.
Yeah, take your time.
I'm having a personal plea to the committee, to the commission.
Would you like us to take, I think let's take a 5 minutes adjournment for Mr. Bloem. I think he needs some time. Let's adjourn for 5 minutes.
No, it's fine, Chair.
Is it fine?
Yeah, I'm having a personal plea, Chair, to the commission. Please investigate the death of Vernie Peterson. Because Vernie Peterson was very vocal and against this thing of what is happening. And all of a sudden, Vernie Peterson died. A mysterious death. I am pleading. And the reason why I'm saying that is that his wife and children will be put at rest, because this thing of Vernie Peterson will never die, because he was against corruption and he fought against these tenders of Busasa. That's my personal plea, Chairperson.
No, thank you, Mr. Bloem. Thank you, Mr. Bloem. We have heard what you have said, and we will reflect on it. The legal team and the investigators will reflect on it. And yeah, okay. Thank you.
Mr. Bloem, you mentioned the Judicial Committee, the Oversight Committee. I think its correct name is the Judicial Inspectorate of Prisons.
Yes.
Do you have anything to add in respect of that committee?
Chairperson, there was a judge during my time, the head of this judicial...
Judicial Inspectorate.
Yes.
Yes.
His name was, his surname was Erasmus.
Yes.
Chairperson, if the committee can call him as well. Chairperson, he raised in his reports many a times objection to these tenders.
Yes.
In his annual reports, because
Yes.
the judges
Yeah.
were giving annual reports.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
And
yes.
he was raising
Yes. Yes.
those things
Yes.
all the time.
Yes. Do you know whether he was from the Western Cape High Court?
It's from the Western Cape High Court.
Oh, because there is Judge Erasmus in the Western Cape
Yeah,
High
it's
Court.
Judge Erasmus, yeah.
Yeah, but you say his reports, some of his reports will reflect his concerns and objections to
Exactly,
this.
exactly, Chairperson.
Yes.
And according to me,
Yes.
it's an honorable person. He will give
Yes.
information
Yes.
to the
The
commission.
commission.
Yeah.
No, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
In fact, I understand that he has expressed these sentiments to you.
He called me a chairperson.
Yes.
And he said, Judge Erasmus said to me, Mr. Bloem, I'm giving you full permission to
Yes.
tell the commission
Yes.
that I am prepared
Yes.
to contribute
Yes.
and help
Yes.
this commission with information.
Thank you very
So,
much. Yes.
He is
Offered,
prepared,
yeah.
yes.
Yes. No, thank you very much for that.
Before Mr. Bloem makes closing remarks, Chair, there is some further information that he has brought to the attention of the investigators who've
Yes.
recorded it in a supplementary affidavit, but it's not in a state to be handed up. But I
Okay.
would like to lead the evidence, if I may, and then we can put that evidence into the form of a supplementary affidavit.
Okay,
And
that's
may
fine.
I understand and trust that you would want to continue for the next 10 minutes or so to conclude the evidence.
Yeah, I would prefer that we conclude so that, because he's the only witness we have for today, isn't it?
Yes, Chair.
So that when we adjourn, then we are done for the day.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
The supplementary note, do you have it before you?
Yes.
We will put this in affidavit form in due course, but it refers to a meeting that took place in October 2008. Am I correct?
That's correct, yes.
What happened at that meeting? Well, firstly, what meeting are you referring to? Secondly, what happened at the meeting?
It was a portfolio committee meeting in Parliament. The commissioner was Venny Peterson. The commissioner was telling us, as I have said before, that he is against these tenders of Busasa, this outsourcing. He briefed the committee further about the resignation of a newly appointed CFO, Ms. Nadira Singh. She was there few months. She was the only and a qualified chartered accountant because Commissioner Peterson wanted to clean the department. But unfortunately, she uncovered corruption, and she was then threatened with her life, and she resigned immediately, with immediate effect. That is what a commissioner reported to the committee, that here is a person, qualified person, for the first time that we are having a qualified chartered accountant. This person is gone because of. Chairperson, I must say it to the commission. Correctional
Yes.
services, it's a very, very dangerous place, a department. When you are being targeted, you are being targeted.
Yes.
And you must be very careful because something can happen to you.
Yes.
So Nadira decided to resign. Commissioner was also saying to us, he was criticizing this Busasa contracts and saying that why are you outsourcing? Because we are having farms, we are producing our own food, and so on. In the meeting where Gillingham and them were there in the meeting, he was very vocal, Chairperson. That's why they have removed him from the committee. That is what has happened in that meeting.
You say he lasted a year
He lasted for a year.
at,
And he was
in
gone.
his position as Commissioner of Correctional Services.
Yeah, and then you, yeah.
Did he mention in that meeting anything about planning and budgeting?
He was saying to us, a poor planning and budgeting in the Department of Correctional Services is a very serious problem. He said millions of rands has been wasted in the tendering, catering, and TV contracts. Vinnie Peterson. And he said, this thing must come to an end. That is what he have said then in that meeting, Chair.
Did he talk about the redirection of funds in that meeting?
Yeah, he said that people are redirecting money intended for certain projects to secure lucrative food contracts and TVs. That is what Mr. Peterson, the commissioner, have said. Money is being diverted to this catering and television, because these people were hell-bent, Chairperson, that this thing must go on. The kitchen, the outsourcing of the kitchen, and this thing of the television sets. Nobody could stop them. So Mr. Peterson was talking about those things.
Do you know when, in relation to his departure from correctional services, that was when he spoke like that? In other words, how close was it, or how soon after that was he removed, or was there any relationship at all between him articulating that stance and his removal from correctional services? Is there any proximity between the two?
Chairperson, few months after this meeting, he was removed.
Yes.
And then he was taken to sports and
Yes.
recreation.
Yes.
Everybody, Chairperson, all the NGOs that have worked with us, everybody was very surprised and shocked about his removal
Yes.
from correctional services.
Yes.
But all of us knew that it is because of this thing. This
Yes.
man fought against corruption
Yes.
in the Department of Correctional Services.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Bloem. You wished also to make some concluding remarks. May he make them, Chair?
Yeah, that's fine.
You do so in paragraph 19 of your statement.
Chairperson, thank you very much. The reason why I have decided to come to this commission, I really want to see anybody who have made him or her guilty of corruption or any other crime must be in prison. They must go to jail. Chairperson, the reason why I'm saying so, Nelson Mandela, many other leaders went to prison for a very long time. Many people went into exile for a very long time. Other people have paid with their lives for this freedom that we are enjoying today. We can't allow that this thing must happen when we are still alive. Chairperson, we must encourage each and every person. We must root this country from this corruption that we are facing today. And Chairperson, I must say, I'm having full confidence in this commission. And I want to give you the assurance, Chairperson, that I am all the time ready to assist. But the other people out there that know about this corruption and state capture must come forward. Chairperson, it's not only in the Department of Correctional Services. Many other departments are also having this problem. I am saying, Chairperson, that people must come forward and assist, because I am doing it, Chairperson, to assist this country. I don't want my children, Chairperson, to live a life under a corrupt society. We must save this country, Chairperson. And I'm having full confidence in you, Chairperson, that you are the hope of South Africa as we speak now, this commission. Thank you very much, Chair.
No, thank you very much for your closing remarks, Mr. Bloem. As I indicated earlier on, I really appreciate that you have come forward to assist this commission. And you are quite correct that everybody out there who loves this country, who appreciates the sacrifices that were made by very, very many people in order for this country to be free. Everyone who appreciates all of those things, who has got knowledge and information of corruption, a serious corruption that has been happening in our country, that continues to happen, and acts of state capture, must come forward and give information to the commission, give evidence to the commission, so that at least this commission will have a good and complete picture of how state capture happened, who facilitated it, who participated in it, who were involved in covering up corruption, who did not want other people to fight corruption, who were busy facilitating corruption, so that, among other things, this commission can make recommendations as to what measures this country needs to take or to put in place in order to make sure that state capture never happens again, and that there is hope that one day this country would be a country free of corruption. Of course, we know that no country is completely free of corruption, but there is no reason why this country cannot in due course arrive at a time when corruption would be so negligible that we can all be able to say ours is a corruption-free country, relatively speaking. So we thank you very much. I hope that other members of parliament who may also be aware of issues of state capture, issues of corruption, and maybe who may also be aware how portfolio committees in which they served, how they were unable to play their proper oversight role because of people who may have been abetting state capture and corruption, that they will also come forward and be able to tell the commission and therefore share with the nation what has happened, because if they don't come out and tell us, we might not know the full extent of what has happened in terms of state capture and corruption. We might not know how Parliament was affected by state capture and corruption. And therefore, we might not be able to make effective recommendations as to what should be put in place to make sure that this country becomes a better country tomorrow. Thank you very much, Mr. Bloem. I will release you for now, but from what you have said, it's clear that you will come back because there is more that you want to tell the Commission. So, and you will continue to cooperate with investigators so that arrangements can be made for you in due course to come back and give us more evidence.
Yes, Chair.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You are released.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Pretorius?
Thank you, Chair. As foreshadowed, may we adjourn now. There are 4 other witnesses who need to be called in order
Yes.
to wrap up, at least for the present, this phase of evidence.
Yes.
The 4 witnesses can conveniently complete their evidence on Tuesday.
Yes.
And if the Commission doesn't sit on Monday, it will
Yes.
give us some time
Yes.
to prepare the
Yes.
necessary evidence so that it can be completed on Tuesday.
Yes.
And then, Chair, I don't know if you wish me to mention the rest of the week or whether you wish to do so.
Maybe we can mention it on Tuesday.
Yes, Chair.
Yeah, maybe we can mention on Tuesday what will happen for the rest of the week.
As you please, Chair.
Oh, actually, now I remember. So I think you were hinting that maybe I should mention it now.
Well, it's up to you, Chair. It was only a hint, Chair.
Well, maybe let me do it on Tuesday when we have seen, because what if we don't finish on Tuesday?
Yes,
I'm
we
not
may
sure.
not finish on
Yeah,
Tuesday,
yeah,
and
so-
therefore Wednesday we keep in reserve.
Yeah.
Chair, I was thinking of the later part of the
Yeah.
week.
Well, I think let me announce on Tuesday. Yeah.
As you please, Chair.
Yeah. We adjourn, therefore, and will not sit on Monday, but we will resume on Tuesday at 10 o'clock. We adjourn.
Thank you.